She was just standing there, watching silently as elite soldiers failed to hit the impossible target. The sergeant thought she was lost, out of place among military legends. When she asked to try, the range erupted in laughter. He handed her the rifle with mocking instructions. What happened next left everyone in stunned silence. The target exploded with impossible force, the blast wave knocking the sergeant off his feet. As dust settled, a single question hung in the air. Who was this woman that just accomplished what no one in history had done before? And why was the maintenance worker now standing at attention, saluting her with tears in his eyes? From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight, subscribe to join our storytelling community. We have so many more untold legends to share. The morning light cut across forward operating base Epsilon like a precision blade, illuminating dust particles that danced through the crisp mountain air. Sergeant Thaddeus Blackwood stood with his feet planted firmly on the firing range, his weathered face bearing the impassive expression that had become his trademark over 23 years of military service. "Adjust for windage, Hayward. You are thinking like it is a straight shot," he barked at a young specialist whose last 3 rounds had missed by increasingly embarrassing margins. "This is not your grandfather's backyard plinking." The elite sniper training facility, nestled in terrain so remote it did not appear on civilian maps, had earned a reputation that extended beyond conventional military circles. Specialists from across military branches and even certain allied forces came to test their mettle against what Blackwood had lovingly designated the Widow's Walk, a reinforced target positioned 1,760 yards away across a deep ravine where unpredictable wind patterns created what the meteorologists called a harmonic disruption zone. In simpler terms, no one had ever hit it. Lieutenant Zephyr Frost approached Blackwood, his tablet displaying security footage from the main gate. "Sergeant, we have an unscheduled visitor." Blackwood did not bother hiding his annoyance. "Tell me it is not another congressional aide wanting a photo op." "No, sir, it is." Frost hesitated, checking the authorization again. "A civilian woman. Clearance came directly from SOCOM headquarters. No explanation, just an instruction to grant her full access." 15 minutes later, Blackwood watched with narrowed eyes as a non-military vehicle approached. When the passenger door opened, he found himself studying a woman who seemed fundamentally out of place in their world of tactical precision and military hierarchy. Wren Calloway appeared to be in her 60s, though something about her made age difficult to determine. She wore simple civilian clothes, khaki pants, a faded blue button-down shirt, and worn hiking boots. No tactical gear, no military bearing, no visible credentials beyond the temporary badge clipped to her shirt. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes surveyed the range with quiet intensity. What bothered Blackwood most was the way she moved, economical, deliberate, wasting nothing. It was not civilian movement. "Ma'am," he approached her with the minimum required courtesy. "This is an active training facility. I am not sure what brings you to Epsilon, but—" "I am just here to observe, Sergeant," she said, her voice carrying unexpected clarity. "Please continue your exercises." Throughout the morning, Blackwood became increasingly irritated by her presence. She stood silently at the periphery, watching each shooter, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound book. The trainee snipers grew distracted, whispering theories about who she might be. "Some kind of efficiency consultant," suggested one. "Nah, probably a journalist with connections," replied another. As the day's formal training concluded, Blackwood was already fantasizing about the whiskey waiting in his quarters when Wren Calloway approached him directly. "Sergeant Blackwood," she said without preamble, "I would like to attempt the long shot." The range went silent, then erupted in barely concealed laughter. Blackwood did not bother hiding his amusement. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that target has never been hit. We have had Medal of Honor recipients and Olympic marksmen try and fail." She simply waited, expression unchanged. Blackwood glanced at his amused troops, then made a theatrical gesture toward their most advanced rifle system. "Well, I suppose there is no harm in letting you try, though I should warn you, only ghosts and gods land that shot." He made a show of explaining basic rifle operations, speaking slowly as if to a child. "This is the trigger. You will want to squeeze it gently, not pull." If she was offended, she showed no sign. She simply nodded and waited for him to finish his condescending tutorial. As she finally took the rifle, Blackwood noticed something peculiar. Her hands did not shake at all. She made one minor adjustment to the scope without looking through it, her fingers finding the calibration dial with practiced familiarity. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Frost stepped forward. "Current wind conditions are variable, 12 to 15 knots, shifting northeast." "Do not waste your time, Lieutenant," Blackwood interrupted. "The lady is just having her military tourism moment." But Frost had noticed something that Blackwood had missed. As Wren prepared to fire, her breathing pattern shifted into the precise rhythm taught only in the most advanced sniper programs, a technique classified beyond the standard training manuals. The entire range had fallen silent as Wren took her position. Her movements were methodical, practiced. She did not rush, did not showboat. She made several adjustments that Blackwood could not understand, accounting for variables beyond standard training. He began a sarcastic comment but stopped mid-sentence when he noticed her expression had completely changed. The pleasant civilian demeanor had vanished, replaced by something focused, almost otherworldly. Her eyes, now fixed on the distant target, held the 1,000-yard stare he had seen only in combat veterans who had witnessed things they could not unsee. For the first time since she had arrived, Sergeant Thaddeus Blackwood felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. The rifle rested against Wren's shoulder as naturally as if it were an extension of her body. She drew a slow breath, held it at precisely the right moment, and squeezed the trigger with perfect pressure. The crack echoed across the ravine. For a long moment, nothing happened. Blackwood had already prepared his sympathetic but smug response when the impossible occurred. The target did not just register a hit, it erupted. The reinforced bunker detonated with a force far beyond what a practice target should produce. The explosion sent a visible shockwave rippling through the air, crossing the ravine in seconds. When it hit, the blast physically knocked Blackwood backward, dust engulfing the entire range. Men dropped to the ground instinctively, years of training taking over. As the air cleared, Blackwood found himself staring at Wren Calloway, who was calmly returning the rifle to its stand as if she had done nothing more remarkable than mail a letter. "What was that?" he demanded, finding his voice. "That target is not supposed to—" He was interrupted by a clatter. An elderly maintenance worker had dropped his tools and was approaching Wren with visible shock. The man, whose name tag identified him as Samuels, stopped a respectful distance from her, then straightened his posture and offered a perfect formal salute. "Phantom 6, he whispered, voice heavy with reverence. Blackwood looked between them in confusion. "What did you call her?" Lieutenant Frost was already accessing classified files on his tablet, his security clearance opening doors that had previously been invisible. His eyes widened as images appeared. Declassified mission reports, redacted photographs spanning 40 years, impossible shots during hostage situations, war zones, terrorist standoffs, all attributed to a classified operative codenamed Phantom 6. "Sir," Frost's voice had changed, now filled with something between awe and disbelief. "She is a legend," Samuels, the maintenance worker, stepped forward. "She is the one who made the Mogadishu rescue shot in '93. 2 miles, 40-knot winds, the shot they teach as theoretically impossible." Blackwood's mind raced back to his early training. Every sniper knew about the Mogadishu miracle, a shot so beyond possible parameters that instructors used it as an example of the outer limits of human capability. No one had ever claimed credit. The shooter's identity had remained classified for decades. "But that would make her—" Blackwood could not finish the sentence. "I was there," Samuel said quietly. "I was the spotter on that mission. Calculated everything perfectly. Told her it could not be done. Wind variables were beyond compensation. She said, 'The wind does not matter if you understand it is not your enemy.' Then she made a shot that saved 27 hostages." Blackwood turned toward the wall of photographs. Elite snipers who had attempted and failed the Widow's Walk challenge. His eyes fixed on a faded image from nearly 30 years earlier. The woman in the photo was younger, but unmistakably Wren Calloway. It was not documentation of a failure. It was her, establishing the benchmark that no one was ever meant to replicate. As this realization dawned on him, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. 2 Blackhawks appeared over the mountain ridge, landing in the open area beyond the range. Military officials in dress uniforms emerged, approaching with purpose. The lead officer, a stern-faced woman with general stars, addressed Wren directly. Colonel Calloway, I see you have made your point. Colonel. Wren Calloway outranked everyone present. Lieutenant Frost was scrolling through newly accessible files, pieces falling into place. Sir, he said to Blackwood, voice low with disbelief. She designed this program, the entire training facility. She was the original architect of the long-range infiltration protocols we use today. The general addressed the assembled personnel. For those unaware, you stand in the presence of Colonel Wren Calloway, founding member of the Advanced Tactical Precision Unit. Most of what she accomplished remains classified and will likely remain so for another 50 years. Blackwood struggled to process this information. The woman he had mocked and condescended to was not only a superior officer, but apparently a living legend. The widow's walk was never meant to be conquered, the general continued. It was designed as a humility lesson. No trainee was supposed to hit it. It reminded our best that there were always limits, preventing fatal overconfidence in the field. Wren Calloway had remained silent throughout this revelation, her expression unreadable. Now, for the first time since she had fired, she spoke. The target was not designed to explode that way, she said quietly. Someone modified it, recently. The general's expression darkened. That is what we feared. Colonel Calloway was brought in to verify our suspicions. Someone has been tampering with training protocols. Blackwood suddenly understood. She had not come to embarrass him or show off. She had come to investigate a security breach, and had just confirmed it in the most definitive way possible. As teams of security personnel fanned out across the base, Lieutenant Frost continued digging through the newly accessible files. What he discovered left him stunned. Sergeant, he said, showing Blackwood the tablet. Look at this. The personnel file showed a mission from decades earlier, a classified operation in Southeast Asia. The images were graphic. An entire team lost when a commanding officer had refused to believe Wren's assessment of an impossible shot. The after-action report concluded that had her judgment been trusted, all lives would have been saved. She had been training instructors ever since, ensuring no one made the same mistake. Blackwood found her standing alone at the edge of the range, looking out toward the still smoldering target. Colonel, he began, uncertain how to continue. I owe you an apology. She turned, studying him with eyes that had seen more than he could imagine. No, Sergeant, you behaved exactly as expected. That is why I chose this approach. I do not understand. She gestured toward the busy activity around the base. The saboteur needed to believe their modifications went unnoticed. A quiet inspection would have driven them underground. We needed something dramatic to force their hand. You used me, Blackwood realized. I used your predictability, she corrected. Your record shows you are an excellent instructor but dismissive of outside perspectives. You needed that lesson as much as we needed to flush out our saboteur. Before Blackwood could respond, commotion erupted near the equipment shed. Security personnel were escorting one of the junior range officers away in restraints. Lieutenant Hayward, Wren noted, recruited by a private military contractor. He has been subtly modifying equipment to collect performance data and sabotaging the best shooters to prevent them from being deployed to certain regions. Blackwood felt a chill. Hayward had been under his command for 8 months. He had noticed nothing. Your training methods are sound, Sergeant, she continued, but you have created an environment where questioning authority is discouraged. That makes it dangerous for subordinates to report suspicious behavior. The truth of her words stung more than any reprimand. She reached into her pocket and withdrew the spent shell casing from her shot, offering it to him. The best instructors are the ones who learn alongside their students. As the day ended, Wren prepared to depart with the investigation team. Blackwood, acting on instinct rather than orders, gathered all personnel to stand at attention, offering a full formal salute, the highest respect one soldier could show another. After she had gone, Blackwood found a small leather-bound notebook on the firing line. Inside was a list of names, fallen soldiers saved by shots others had deemed impossible. The final page bore a handwritten note. The shot is never impossible. The failure is believing you already know what cannot be done. 3 weeks later, changes were evident throughout Forward Operating Base Epsilon. Sergeant Blackwood had implemented what instructors now called the Phantom Protocol. a new approach emphasizing that limits existed to be understood, not accepted without question. A photograph of Colonel Calloway had been added to the wall of legends, this time with proper context. Lieutenant Frost, now heading security for the facility, maintained the Widow's Walk target, though no one was encouraged to hit it. It remained what it had always been intended to be, a reminder of humility. In his quarters each night, Blackwood would hold the spent shell casing, turning it over in his fingers. It represented more than an impossible shot. It symbolized the danger of dismissing what we do not understand, and the quiet heroes who never seek recognition but deserve it more than anyone. The morning after Wren's departure, Blackwood had awakened to find an official communication from Central Command. He was being promoted to the Training Oversight Division, tasked with implementing new protocols across all elite sniper facilities. His first assignment, a complete review of training methodologies to identify blind spots and potential security vulnerabilities. "They want me to find more Haywards," he told Frost as they walked the perimeter of the range, "before they do real damage." "Makes sense," Frost replied. "You were fooled by one. Makes you the perfect person to spot others." Blackwood winced but nodded. The lieutenant was not wrong. "Did you know," Frost continued, "that Colonel Calloway specifically requested you for this assignment? Her report cited your, and I quote, exceptional adaptability when confronted with paradigm shifts. She seems to think quite highly of you, despite everything." Blackwood stopped walking. "She requested me? After I treated her like that?" "Perhaps because of how you treated her," Frost suggested. "She needed someone who would challenge conventional thinking." That evening, Blackwood found himself reviewing footage of Wren's impossible shot. He studied her technique frame by frame, noting subtle adjustments she had made that defied standard training. Each movement contained decades of hard-won wisdom, encoded in muscle memory so refined it appeared effortless. What struck him most was not the technical precision, but the absolute absence of ego. There had been no grandstanding, no desire to prove herself or humiliate others. She had simply done what needed doing, with the minimum necessary force and maximum possible effect. It was the purest expression of mastery he had ever witnessed. The following week, a package arrived for Blackwood. Inside, he found a worn copy of a book he had never heard of, The Philosophy of Precision by W.C. Phantom. The inscription inside read simply, "Limits exist only where imagination fails. Remember this when training the next generation." The book contained principles so advanced they made conventional sniper theory look like child's play. Concepts of reading atmospheric pressure through visual cues, calculating trajectory adjustments based on barely perceptible environmental factors, and psychological techniques for achieving perfect mental stillness under extreme pressure. "This is beyond classified," Frost whispered when Blackwood showed him the text. "This is her life's work." "Which means she expects us to do something with it," Blackwood replied. The implementation of the Phantom Protocol began with a complete restructuring of how instructors evaluated trainee performance. Failure was no longer seen as a black mark, but as valuable data. Questions were encouraged, even when they challenged established doctrine. Most importantly, the culture of mockery that had pervaded the elite units was systematically dismantled. "We cannot afford to silence the next Wren Calloway," Blackwood told his instructors. "Our job is not to weed out those who do not fit our expectations. Our job is to recognize exceptional talent, especially when it comes in unexpected packages." 6 months after the incident, Blackwood received word that Colonel Calloway had formally retired. The official ceremony was classified, attended only by the highest echelons of military leadership. Her service record, what little of it had been declassified, listed 117 confirmed impossible shots. Lives saved, estimated in the thousands. No medals were listed, no public accolades, just the quiet acknowledgement of a lifetime spent in the shadows, doing what others thought could not be done. A year passed since the day Wren Calloway had demonstrated the impossible shot. Forward Operating Base Epsilon had transformed under Blackwood's revised training protocols. Skepticism was balanced with openness, tradition with innovation. The shooting range had become a place where limits were acknowledged but never accepted as final. On the anniversary of what trainees now called the Phantom Demonstration, Blackwood received a message from an encrypted military channel. Coordinates, a time, and a single instruction. Come alone. The location was a remote ridgeline overlooking the base, accessible only by a steep hiking trail that wound through dense forest. Blackwood made the climb at dawn, tactical instincts fully engaged despite the peaceful surroundings. At the summit, he found Wren Calloway sitting on a weathered log, gazing out at the distant mountains. She wore hiking clothes and carried no visible weapons, though Blackwood knew better than to assume she was unarmed. "Impressive changes you have implemented, Sergeant Major," she said without turning, "though I suppose I should say Colonel now." His promotion had come through only 2 days earlier. The news had not been made public yet. "Word travels fast," he replied, taking a seat beside her. "Among certain circles," she agreed. "Your Phantom Protocol has caught the attention of people who rarely notice anything below their pay grade." "Your protocol," he corrected. "I just gave it a name." She smiled faintly. "Names have power. What you call something shapes how people perceive it." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. Below them, the training facility was coming to life, tiny figures moving with purpose across the grounds. "Why did you request to meet?" Blackwood finally asked. "To warn you," she said simply, "and to give you something." From her pack, she withdrew a sealed envelope and a small metal case. She handed him the envelope first. Inside was a transfer order, effective immediately. He was being reassigned to the Pentagon Strategic Operations Division. The position description was deliberately vague, but the security clearance level was higher than anything he had seen before. "I do not understand," he said. "I have only just begun implementing the new protocols here." "Which is precisely why you are being moved up," she explained. "What you have done here has proven effective. Now they want you to scale it across all special operations training facilities." "They or you?" Her expression revealed nothing. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She considered this. "Both. Though my recommendation carried particular weight given certain events currently unfolding." "What events?" "Open the case." Inside the metal container, he found a thumb drive and a single photograph. The image showed a sniper position on a mountainside overlooking what appeared to be a civilian settlement. The rifle was unlike any he had seen before, clearly advanced beyond current military technology. 3 weeks ago, an operative with skills comparable to mine eliminated a protected witness from a distance of 3.2 miles, she said, her voice clinically detached. "The shot required compensation for variables our current models cannot account for." The operative then vanished without a trace. Blackwood felt cold despite the morning sun. "Someone like you, but working for whom?" "That is what you are being assigned to discover," she replied. "The thumb drive contains everything we know, which is not much. Whoever this is, they received training similar to mine, but they are using it for very different purposes." "You think there is a rogue Phantom program?" She shook her head. "Not rogue, intentional. Someone has been developing their own cadre of impossible shooters. We need to know who, how many, and what they intend to do with them." Blackwood studied the photograph again. "Why me? There must be hundreds of officers with more experience in intelligence work." "Because you have proven something essential," she said. "You can admit when you are wrong, adapt to new information, and implement systemic change based on that adaptation. That combination is rarer than you might think, especially among those with high enough clearance for this task." She stood, signaling the conversation was nearing its end. "There is one more thing you should know. The Widow's Walk target at Epsilon was modified as a test. They wanted to see if I could still make the shot despite their sabotage." "They? The same they who are behind this rogue sniper?" "Most likely. They have been watching our training programs, identifying potential recruits, and testing the boundaries of what we consider possible." "Why tell me this now?" "Because your life is about to become very complicated, Colonel Blackwood. You will be entering a world where nothing is as it seems, where friends may be enemies, and where the lines between agencies, nations, and ideologies blur beyond recognition." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Trust your instincts. They are better than you realize." As she turned to leave, Blackwood called after her. "Will I see you again?" She paused. "If you do, it will likely mean things have gone very wrong indeed." With that, she disappeared into the tree line, moving with the same efficient economy he had noticed that first day at the range. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just pure, practiced purpose. 2 days later, Blackwood stood in a secure briefing room deep within the Pentagon. 5 people sat at the table before him, their identities concealed by their lack of insignia or name badges. The only woman among them spoke first. "Colonel Blackwood, your record indicates a recent epiphany regarding the limits of conventional training methodology. Would you care to elaborate?" He recognized a test when he heard one. "My record shows that I was arrogant enough to dismiss an expert based on appearances, and fortunate enough to learn from that mistake before it cost lives." A slight nod from the woman. "And what would you say is the most valuable lesson from that experience?" "That the most dangerous limitation is not physical capability, but our belief about what is possible," he replied, "and that those who quietly exceed those limitations are both our greatest asset and potentially our greatest threat." "Explain." Blackwood considered his words carefully. "Colonel Calloway demonstrated that our understanding of the possible is incomplete. If she could exceed those limits for beneficial purposes, others could exceed them for harmful ones. The difference lies not in the skill, but in who wields it and why." The panel exchanged glances. The woman slid a folder across the table. "Welcome to Oversight, Colonel. Your first assignment is to review all special operations training facilities for potential security vulnerabilities similar to what was uncovered at Epsilon. Your second assignment is to identify and track a group we believe is recruiting and training snipers with capabilities matching or exceeding our Phantom protocols." "And my authorization?" "Is absolute," she replied. "You answer only to this panel. Your cover is training standardization, which is partially true. Your actual mission is to find these ghost shooters before they can be deployed against high-value targets." As Blackwood left the Pentagon that evening, he felt the weight of his new responsibility settling on his shoulders. In his pocket, he carried the spent shell casing Wren had given him, a reminder that the impossible was merely improbable until someone proved otherwise. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text contained only 4 words. "The wind is shifting." He understood immediately. Conditions were changing. What had been predictable was becoming variable. He would need to adjust his calculations accordingly. 6 months into his new role, Blackwood had identified 17 potential security breaches across various training facilities. Each followed the same pattern: subtle equipment modifications, performance data being extracted, and the occasional sabotage of promising trainees who demonstrated exceptional aptitude. More disturbing were the personnel files that kept appearing on his secure server. Snipers who had washed out of elite programs despite showing unusual potential. Many had disappeared from official records shortly thereafter, only to resurface years later as private security contractors for shadowy corporations with government connections. They were building their own Phantom program, hidden in plain sight. Blackwood established a new training initiative called Variable Response Protocols, ostensibly designed to standardize sniper training across all branches. Its actual purpose was to identify potential Phantom-level talents before outside interests could recruit them. The first class of VRP trainees included 12 individuals selected for specific cognitive and physical markers that Wren Calloway had identified as essential for impossible shots. Among them was a quiet woman from Montana whose preliminary scores had broken every record in the system. When Blackwood visited the training facility to observe her performance, he found himself experiencing a profound sense of déjà vu. She stood at the firing line with the same economy of movement, the same focused intensity he had witnessed in Wren. After she had completed her exercise, flawlessly executing shots that would have been considered exceptional for a seasoned veteran, he approached her. "Specialist Adler," he said. "Impressive shooting." "Thank you, sir," she replied, her eyes revealing nothing. "Have you ever attempted a mile-long shot?" A slight pause. "Not officially, sir." He nodded, understanding the subtext. "Walk with me." As they moved away from the others, he spoke quietly. "We are aware of attempts to recruit people with your particular talents for unofficial programs. I want you to know there is another path." "What path would that be, sir?" "One where your abilities serve their intended purpose. Protection, not elimination. Saving lives, not taking them." She studied him for a long moment. You are talking about the Phantom program. It was not a question. The fact that she knew the name confirmed his suspicions. Someone has approached you already, he stated. 6 months ago, she admitted. Offered triple my current salary, plus performance bonuses. Said I was wasting my potential here. And yet you stayed. She shrugged. My father always said if someone offers you that much money, they expect to own you completely. I prefer to belong to myself. Blackwood felt a spark of hope. What if I told you there is a third option? Neither the standard military track nor the private contractor route. A program where you would work directly with the original Phantom. Her eyes widened slightly, the first genuine emotion he had seen from her. Colonel Calloway is involved? Potentially, if we can identify enough candidates with both the skill and the integrity required. That evening, Blackwood sent a secure message to the encrypted channel Wren had established. Found the first one, possibly more to follow, wind direction stabilizing. The response came hours later. Proceed with caution. Not all ghosts are friendly. In his quarters, Blackwood removed the shell casing from his pocket, a habit he had developed when facing difficult decisions. It represented the moment everything he thought he knew had been upended by a quiet woman who had accomplished the impossible without fanfare or ego. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Someone whose quiet expertise went unnoticed until a moment when it could not be ignored. Their stories remind us that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we least expect. The ones who do not need to prove themselves because they know exactly who they are and what they can do. And when we are fortunate enough to encounter such people, the only appropriate response is to learn from them. To recognize that our understanding of what is possible is always incomplete, and that the quietest voice in the room might be the one most worth hearing.